Hi guys, this makes 10 or 12 times that I've tried to do this. I'm not a real good reader because I see four of everything. If I close one eye, I see two. That makes it a little better, but I can't switch eyes. My eyes get tired real quick trying to read. All I gotta do is move an eye a little bit and I lose my place, so I stumble quite a bit over it. Anyway, this is the cartoon that I've got there is from Calvin and Hobbes, but I had an AI generate this picture. Is Calvin in his old age, and him and Hobbes are saying goodbye to each other. This is a very sad story that I found probably 10 years ago. The Calvin and Hobbes cartoon ran from 1985 to 1995, and I was really sad when it ended. And I was really happy when I found this final conversation between the two of them, but it makes me cry. So please bear with me. And as I stumble my way through this, please forgive that too. All right. Uh, Calvin and Hobbes' last goodbye. Calvin, sweetheart. In the darkness, Calvin heard the sound of Susie, his wife of 53 years. Calvin struggled to open his eyes. God, he was so tired, and it took so much strength. Slowly, light replaced the darkness, and soon vision followed. At the foot of his bed stood his wife. Calvin wet his lips and spoke hoarsely. Did you find him? Yes, dear, Susie said smilingly. He was in the attic. Susie reached into her big purse and pulled out a soft old orange tiger. Calvin could not help but laugh. It had been so long, too long. I washed him for you, Susie said, her voice cracking a little as she laid the stuffed tiger next to her husband. Thank you, Susie, Calvin said. A few moments passed as Calvin laid on the hospital bed, his head turned to the side, staring at the old tiger with nostalgia. Dear Calvin, said finally, would you mind leaving me alone with Hobbes for a while? I would like to catch up with him. All right, Susie said. I'll get something to eat in the cafeteria. I'll be back soon. Susie kissed her husband on the forehead and turned to leave. With sudden but gentle strength, Calvin stopped her. Lovingly, he pulled his wife in and gave her a passionate kiss on the lips. I love you, he said. And I love you too, said Susie. Susie turned and left. Calvin saw tears streaming from her face as she went out the door. Calvin then turned to face his oldest and dearest friend. Hello, Hobbes. It's been a long, long time, hasn't it, old pal? Hobbes was no longer a stuffed toy tiger, but a big, furry old tiger. Calvin had always remembered. It sure has, Calvin, said Hobbes. You haven't changed a bit, Calvin smiled. You've changed a lot, Hobbes said sadly. Calvin laughed. Really? I hadn't noticed at all. There was a long pause, the sound of a clock ticking away. The seconds rang throughout the sterile hospital room. So you married Susie Darkins, Hobbes said, finally smiling. I knew you always liked her. Shut up, Calvin said, his smile bigger than ever. Tell me everything I missed. I'd love to hear what you've been up to, Hobbes said excitedly. And so Calvin told him everything. He told him about how he and Susie fell in love in high school and had married after graduating from college, about his 3 kids and 4 grandkids, how he turned Spaceman Spiff into one of the most popular science fiction novels of the decade, and so on. After he told Hobbes all, there was another long pregnant pause. You know, I visited you in the attic a bunch of times, Calvin said. I know, but I couldn't see you. All I saw was a stuffed tiger. Calvin's voice was breaking, and tears of regret started welling up in his eyes. You grew up, old buddy. You grew up, said Hobbes. Calvin broke down and sobbed, hugging his best friend. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I broke my promise. I promised I would never grow up and that we'd be together forever. Hobbes stroked Calvin's hair, or what little there was left of it. But you didn't. What do you mean? We were always together in our dreams. We were. Hobbes, yeah, old buddy, I'm so glad I got to see you like this one last time. Me too, Calvin, me too. Sweetheart, Susie's voice came from outside the door. Yes, dear, Calvin replied. Can I come in? Susie asked. Just a minute. Calvin turned to face Hobbes one last time. Goodbye, Hobbes. Thanks for everything. No, thank you, Calvin, Hobbes said. Calvin turned back to the door and said, You can come in now. Susie came in and said, Look who's come to visit you. Calvin's children and grandchildren followed Susie into Calvin's room. The youngest grandchild ran past the rest of them and hugged Calvin in a hard, excited hug. Grandpa! Screamed the child in delight. Frances, cried Calvin's daughter, be gentle with your grandfather. Calvin's daughter turned to her dad. I'm sorry, Daddy. Francis never seems to behave these days. He just runs around making a mess and coming up with weird stories. Calvin laughed and said, Well now, that sounds just like me when I was his age. Calvin and his family chatted some more until a nurse came and said, Sorry, folks, but visiting hours are up. You'll have to leave. Calvin's beloved family said goodbye and promised to visit tomorrow. As they turned to leave, Calvin said, Frances, come here for a moment. Frances came over to her grandfather's side. What is it, Gramps? Calvin reached over to his stuffed tiger on his bedside and held him out shakingly to his grandson, who looked excitedly as he did so many years ago. This is Hobbes. He was my best friend when I was your age. I want you to have him. He's just a stuffed tiger, Frances said with an eyebrows raised. Calvin laughed. Well, let me tell you a secret. Frances leaned closer to Calvin. Calvin whispered, If you catch him in a tiger trap, using a tuna sandwich as bait, he will turn into a real tiger. Frances grasped in delight. Full on awe, Calvin continued. Not only that, he will be your best friend forever. Wow, thanks, Grandpa, Frances said, hugging his grandpa tightly. Frances, we need to go now, Calvin's daughter called. Okay, Frances shouted back. Take good care of him, Calvin said. I will, Frances said before running off after the rest of the family. Calvin laid on his back and stared at the ceiling. The time was so close. He could feel it in his bones. Calvin tried to remember a quote he read in a book. Once it said something about death being the next great adventure, or something like that. His eyelids grew heavy and his breathing slowed. As he went deeper into his final sleep, he heard Hobbes as he was right next to him at his bedside. I'll take care of him, Calvin. I'll take care of him. Calvin took his first steps toward a more adventure and breathed his last with a grin on his face. Man, I tell you what, sometimes I'm a wreck inside and I just hide it so well. Something like this can bring it out. I appreciate your listening to me. I love you guys a lot. And I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.